Okay, we'll start here in lecture 8, part A. I have flashed my slides. It's visible, no? Oh, tapi di mana buat para pela kata-kata kawan na interview. Okay, dari ini mante. Mau ada. Per transaction here, clients some 5 rupees. 5 rupees literally. Oh, okay. 5, 6 again. Right. Okay. So we stopped here last time. So we discuss physical security areas. We discuss access control. I have flashed my screen. Is it visible to you all?
Yes, we can see.
Yeah. So last week we stopped here. We discussed on physical security controls like fingerprints. Those are very important. Like, for example, these magnetic strips is there for credit card and debit card. Now the chip. Earlier it was magnetic strip. Now the chip is there. And we use biometrics technologies. One of them is the fingerprint. So heavily we use fingerprints to do access, even entering into data centers or rooms or whatever. We use this fingerprints. And other method is other biometric method is retina patterns. From your eye patterns, you can recognize a person. So you just have to go closer to the unit and you can look at that. They identify the retina patterns and allow you to enter. Or you can use another biometric method is hand geometry. So you keep the entire hand here. Based on your hand geometry, you can recognize that person. So another method is signature dynamics. So you can write the signature, and through that handwriting you can recognize. So these methods are there, and there are some more. You can use the physical access control with the speech also. So with the voice, they can recognize. So voice biometrics. So this individual voice to authenticate. Or keystroke dynamics also used. So that's another biometric. The way you type it, your speed of the keyboard typing pattern or rhythm, they identify that's you. I mean, it's very unique to you. So if you're given a keyboard and ask you to type, everyone type in different speeds, different levels, different way to press the key, and some are using the keyboard layout with 2 hands they type. Some will be on 1 hand. So based on the typing pattern, the rhythm, they can identify that's the right person who is accessing the system. So these biometrics methods, physical security, basically physical access control security. We will be doing it in 3 ways. Keypad devices allow you to enter the passcode. So that's the one method. So you can enter the password or the code and access to the location. So entering the password. The second method is, instead of putting a password, you have a magnetic strip, which is used by the credit card and debit card heavily on this magnetic strip. The third method is biometrics. Biometrics has multiple variations: fingerprint, retina patterns, hand geometry, signature dynamics. So these are the physical security methods, physical security controls available. And also biometrics, there are another 2 more: speech and keystroke dynamics, So any of these things you can use as a biometrics control. So basically three ways: electronic, so sorry, three ways: physical access control, password, or magnetic strip or whatever chip, then the biometrics. So biometrics has multiple. So then we discuss on the environmental control, especially in a data center environment, you have to control the temperature and the humidity because these typical data centers, what you can see in the picture, is has millions of rupees of equipment. Bigger the data center, the value of the data center on the racks and the servers which is there in those racks are so expensive. So you need to control the temperature, and it produces a lot of heat. So when these servers are running on a data center, it runs a lot of heat. So what you can see is these holes in the raised flow. These holes are there inside the rack also. So normally hot air will go up. So then, sure. So it will be circulated through precision air conditioners, and then the cold air will be pumped from the tiles. So the tiles will send the cold air, and the cold air get heated up. It goes inside the rack, and from the up, it gets hot air, and the server heat will be taken out, and then it go up, and from the up, the what you call precision air conditioners will catch the airflow and again circulate it. So we call it, this side is a hot tile. Hot tile means, this side in the, this is the cold tile, so the rack is cold here. But if you go to the rack back side, it's a hot tile. So tile is, the outside is hot because all the fans blowing out the hot air from the back. So, the people who designing these, what you call data centers, they have guidelines, very popular guidelines is tiering, tier 3 data centers. So in Sri Lanka, we have a couple of tier 3 data centers, like SLT, yes, SLT has one, and Dialog in Malabay data center is a tier 3 data center. Then you have another tier called tier 4, but unfortunately, we don't have a tier 4 level of a data center because the requirement of a tier 4 data center is you have to have a two grid power supplies, grid power supplies too. But unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, we have only CB giving power. So you can't get a two service provider power. But there is a technique where you can get tier 4, even if it is the same service provider CB, then you have to have a two transformers connecting from two networks. Like one, let's say one come from electricity come from, you know, the Sapugas, not Sapugaskan, the Kalanitissa Balagare, the power generation unit, and another one comes from another place. Then, then at least if the network fail, you may have electricity there for the data center. But a little tougher to get that condition sort this out. But if you look at Google and all, these big data centers in the world have, all these tiering standards, where they have a multiple source of electricity providers, connecting with from different transformers. And all normally they keep national grid as a backup. They run the data center through generators and keep national grid as a backup, because that's a fast switch show. So this way, there's a lot of theory goes into designing of data centers, art of designing of data centers. So temperature control, we do it, and we'll have, a full control over the entire data center on, this thing, basically on, what you call cooling units are there, like chill water cooling on the data center. Precision air conditioning is there, and it does the humidity control. Humidity control is very important. No humidity also bad. So if there is no humidity, then electronic circuits get short circuited. High humidity also bad. So you have to control the humidity. But sometimes, the humidity levels are lower than normal air in outside. Um, uh, but it's not zero. It's not very low. And then also you need to have a gaseous fire suppression system. So the fire suppression system bars are running here on the top, and those get activated, and the foam will be pushed and covering these racks when there is a fire, so that the fire will not spread. We don't use water units, use gases, like gases in the sense it's a foam type of a gas. For that fire suppression. Fire detection is important, but fire detection is not enough. When a fire happens, I mean, in office, what you have is fire detection system. So the alarms goes on, when they detect the fire or a smoke. But it doesn't suppress, but then you have to get the ambulance, or, you have to get your fire extinguish units are there. You have to break that and control the fire. But if that cannot control, you have to call the ambulance. You have to call the fire brigades unit, and then they will bring fire brigades and control. But in a data center, you can't do it. $1 million of equipment is there, so you have to control this. So the fire suppression systems has to be implemented. Those are very expensive, and then you get a lot of fire suppression, like gas tanks, like what you call, you get bigger ones like cylinders, and that cylinders has the form and pressurized way, and when it opens the valve, it comes there and spray the what you call this thing to the data center. And so therefore it covers from the oxygen, so that when the oxygen is not there, there's no fire, so fire controls. So this is very important, fire suppression. So that's what you have to spend quite a lot of money on fire suppression systems. And uh, it can't locate outside the wall. It all has to be inside the wall, because the wall should withstand for fire. Even if a fire comes from outside, it should not enter into the data center. So these walls has to be built in a way that the outside fire will not get affected on the inside. And it should be able to withstand for many hours for a hot fire even outside. If it is built on a steel, the walls are built on a steel, you have to use the right steel where you can control it. Building house in data centers should not be located in the flood plain, flooding areas you should not build. So these type of environment controls are very important. These are the environmental controls. So we discuss on physical security controls, and then we discuss on environmental control in a data center. Data center designs are like the dialogue Potuhara one, not the dialogue main Malabi one. Malabi one was done by Chinese company Huawei. But when I was at Just in Time Technologies, we got this order Potuhara, which was initially built by IBM. So I have quite a lot of experience on all these areas of data center designs. I can explain, I can give you material if you really want. And if you're doing that, what need to be audited in a typical, but for an examination point of view, this basic idea of data center controls, things are enough to answer the questions. Anyway, so we discussed the physical security, then we discussed the environmental controls. Because even if your applications are not vulnerable, but if the physical environment is vulnerable, then you have a little bit of a real problem. Your business continuity plans you cannot implement because these are not secure. Then you need to have a logical control. So what is the logical control? These are related to software. So hardware has to be secure. The hardware to be secure. That's what data center you are going to secure, because all your server racks are there in this one. And then you have to make sure that you are having physical right access to the places unauthorized people can't access. But then the software has to be secure. So that's called a logical security. So logical security controls are to external system. So user identification and authentication is required for any software to access, and you should have a restriction of access. Not everyone can access everything in the software, and the generation of audit trails are required in the environment. So every time when a person logs in, you have to have audit trail and what he does, So that's very important, logical control. So access control have been developed to prevent improper use or a manipulation of data files and programs. If someone deletes a file, you should get a log audit trail. I mean, first thing you should not allow them to delete it, if they are not authorized. So they ensure that only these persons with a genuine purpose and unauthorized and authorized have the access to computer system. If you really look at sometimes in ERP system, they will not allow to delete anything unless you back it up. So first you have to do the backup function and then only it authorized, even if you have the highest authority, you still cannot delete anything without backing up. That level of precautions were taken in SAP ERP system, SAP ERP system. Um, so you have to back up to a media and then only you can erase. Because then if the audit trail says this has been erased, but no point because now the data is not there. But if they don't allow to erase without backing up, at least backup is there. So then you get caught. The person who erased get caught. He's having the authority, but he is misusing the system. But the backup has to be there. So he can't come and say it was mistakenly deleted or something like that because you have to take a backup. So because people are political, people can come up with and tell various things. I mean, they can say, "Oh, I did it mistakenly, sorry," but mistakes, ignorance, not responsible. I mean, there's a limit that you can punish. But the cost is already incurred. But the softwares need to have those controls. I mean, I have gone through this pain in my life. I told you last time. Now, so that's what the global some of the software companies like SAP they don't allow because SAP ERP means the entire processes are there. Like it can be HR, it can be operation, it can be finance, or it can be sales and marketing. All these modules of information is in a one central database. So if someone deletes any files of it, it's a disastrous. You can't figure it out. So that's what it doesn't allow you to delete without backing up. So the access control software is another thing. So this access control software protects the file. You can put access control software on top of your application. So that will protect the files, all the programs, data dictionaries, all this processing, from unauthorized access. So if you have a proper access control software, it checks whether you are the real person you are accessing this, and what is your authority. So sometimes it won't just allow you with the username and the password to access. Sends the OTP to your mobile phone and check whether you are the right authentic person. So this will access control software will restrict use of certain devices like terminals, etc. May provide an audit trail for both successful and unsuccessful access attempts. So you should provide the audit trail for not only successful access attempts, even unsuccessful, because hackers or somebody want to breach that controls, they try to attempt so many times. So giving unsuccessful attempts, you can question those internal employees why they attempted like that. What is the reason? For example, a firewall separate from internal and external network. So you can put a firewall. I will discuss what is firewall in next lecture, the part B. Then you will understand what is firewall, and it's separate from internal and external network. Just imagine that you have a house and there's a wall. Now, you we all understand if there's a wall in the house, the boundary walls, people can jump, the walls. How much height you put it up, people will figure it out how to jump. Uh, I mean, height make difficult them to jump, but people will find out some this thing, or maybe sometimes you might have a wall, but you might have put a small, like to make it beautification, some strips. to make the, like moldings, to make your wall beautiful. So the person who can just hold these and, then jump, you know. So to prevent person entering into unauthorized zone, you can put, you can put some pins here on the wall. You have seen sometimes, people put it. But if a guy is interested, he can jump even from that, barrel, good looking shoes, and, jump it from here. But the best way is to put some fire into it, you know. So on the wall top is continuously having the fire. So then it's a little tougher to jump from that, The fire is pretty good, So that's called a firewall. So in organizational firewall means the wall is in a fire so that nobody cannot, unauthorized people cannot enter here or jump out without permission, So how that permission was given is nice. So that's what it separate internal and external networks. So the logical controls, we discuss. One is the access control software. Second is password and ID numbers. The use of passwords and identification numbers is an effective control in an online system to prevent unauthorized access from a computer file. You have to give a password. So list of authorized persons are maintained in the computer. The entry of a password or ID number, uh, a pre-arranged set of personal questions they might ask and use, so like of, the pre-arranged set of personal questions sometimes when you want to entry of a ID or ID number or password, when you create. Uh, you can use badges, magnetic cards. Typically, scan cards may be combined to avoid unauthorized access. Yeah, sometimes you can keep, okay, you need a card, a magnetic card, and plus a fingerprint, both biometrics. So first you have to keep the fingerprints and then scan the card and then only do two factor. So you can use multiple factors of authentication. A security card may be used with a personal computer so that it users must sign on the ID and the password. So security cards may be given like RSA card or whatever dongle or token. And then when you type the username and the password, it will ask the ID number. So that ID was taken from the security card. It has a small clock and it creates always a dynamic number. So you enter that dynamic number and log in. But before you enter that and log in, you have to synchronize this card with the server platform because the server doesn't understand this number. No? So it's a randomly generated number is there. So you can use that as a two-factor authentication. Because if you use username and the password, only, the guy behind you can, stand up and, get that, uh, this, read the password, what you're typing from the keypad when you're pressing the buttons. So to avoid that, only you have another factor that is um, so we that's generate a dynamic password, and you have to have a control records access of date, time, and duration. Let me just show you this type of dynamic. RSA tokens. So that's just a one, So this type of tokens you can see here. So you get different tokens. So this will create a dynamic password, So you were given this token. This token is synced with the server. So every, I think, few seconds, it gives a new number. So you had to enter your username, password, and this dynamic number to log in into it, So it comes in various forms, like, you get it on this way, you can get it onto the mobile also, like, this card number dynamically generating. There's a small banks like HSBC is using, small this thing. So you have to open the mobile app, and then put the dynamic. So they don't give a. Earlier they used to give these tokens, but now dongles, like these type. It's not dongle, it's a sort of a thing. Give me 1 second. Okay, sorry. So so this type of, and sometimes you get different tokens. I mean, you may have seen it in your banks also. Tokens to sometimes corporate customers to log in into a corporate banking site. Retail, you might not give. So it comes on now. It comes on a mobile app also. Like you can just get the token. Yeah. Okay. Uh, so also you have to log every time in the access, get a record, date, time, duration. The proper use authenticated by means the password require password generating procedure to ensure that the valid passwords are known only by the proper individual. Thus, the password should not be displayed when entered at the keyboard. The password security also may be compromised in other ways. For example, logon procedures may be cumbersome and tedious sometimes. Um, then users often store logon sequence on their personal computers and invoke them when they want to use the mainframe facilities. The risk of this practice is anyone with the access to this personal computer, they also can log into the mainframe, because sometimes you will give a mainframe systems, when you have a mainframe is very large, IBM and there are different vendors provide this, mainframe computers is Z series. So mainframe computers is like IBM Z series. So these mainframe computers, we don't have it in Sri Lanka. Right now, I did not install any of these places. But this has a logon sequence. Now, some people, this logon sequence, they keep it in a personal computer. If someone can have the access to logon sequence, they know how to access the mainframe. So that's insecure. So, I mean, because they can't remember this logon sequence, they keep it in the computer and openly, anybody can see it on a personal computer. So they log into the they open the file on the personal computer and see the logon sequence and, type that in the mainframe computer, login terminal and then try to log in. But the problem is if you keep these things in plain text, these procedures. So that will be, not good. So you have to, if you're keeping those, the logon sequences and things like that, you must tell the customer or your employees to store these sequences. I mean, if you can't remember your password, store it in a very proper manner, as notes in, so I'll show you. So these sequences, don't keep it in a computer as a normal file, anybody can access. So what you could do is you can keep those accesses. So like this. So for example, you can use this Evernote. So what you can see is this elephant symbol is the Evernote. So you can use these tools like it's free. Then you can put a password to Evernote so that even if anyone have access on the Evernote, they can't access without entering the password. So when they go into Evernote, yes, they can see all the notes, login sequences. You can keep the Evernotes. So you have it in the mobile phone and the computer, but make sure that it cannot be just open like anybody, because then all the Evernotes messages are accessible to anyone. So yeah, fair enough. You can't remember everything, no? So, but make sure that you remember the Evernote password. You have to keep it somewhere because otherwise, if you can't enter into the Evernote, then you will miss out everything. So Microsoft Note, Evernote, and there are so many secure notes are there. But don't keep it in a plain, file in a computer so that they will log into the mainframe. So the logical controls, then it's not there, or keep a printout in the table, so that login procedure and the usernames and password. To be more, that's bad, So to be more effective, password should consist of random letters, symbols, and numbers. So it should not be able to easily judge. So you have to have random letters, symbols, and numbers. They should not contain words or phrases, So therefore, your password policy has to be clearly defined, So you had when you configure those servers, you have to put it. This password has to have a certain level of digits, 6 digits or 8 digits, and it should contain not only the letters, it can combine symbols, letters, and the numbers, if they don't enter it, if they just type their name or a word or whatever it is, then it rejects and said password is not secure, not strong enough. You had to enter a new password, so when they're creating at the first time, So through these controls, you can control easily because those algorithms are freely available. Because if you just allow them to type something, then type ABC and log in, So everyone can judge or 1, 2, 3 and log in, to the system, So minimum number of this thing. So it is you have to do this process when you harden the servers to server login first, and then the application login. Um, so this when you're doing the hardening part of the server, installing operating system from that point. If you have done the lot of precautions on the logical controls, then you will even have the server access, because sometimes server access is like admin is the admin. Normally by default, admin is the admin name and the password also admin. Anybody can access the server, So that's not good, So make sure that so you follow in applications, you follow the proper this thing. Because if that application doesn't build that, users will create any type of username and a password, any password, So, but it should not allow to create. It should say this is the minimum number of, this thing. But when you are doing installing hardware, the servers, you can hard So you can do this hardening the servers, hardening their servers involves manage access to your services and critical infrastructure, set up firewalls, protect user accounts. So there are documents of how to do harden the server, Um, um, but if you are getting, if it is a bank and if you are providing these card services or something like that, then you have to go to, so this is different methods are there, hardening servers, how you do that. Before installing the applications, how you but here what we're looking at is, if you allow them to put any password, then that's not secure. They put a simple, sometimes they put the name as a password. So anybody can. So that restriction should come from the application, the logical controls, the security controls. You should not allow them to put, and it will very clearly say that password should not have the words or phrases. It should come with some letters, symbols, and numbers, and then you have to explain what is allowed, what is not allowed. Also. The file attributes can be assigned to control access to and the use of files. For example, what is the right controls? You have given read write controls or read only access, or whether he can do the archive or it is hid. So any file, in a server, you can give the file attributes. So if you really look at even even any presentation, like, okay, let me see whether this one, what is the access I have given. You can go to the properties, any file, but in serve access is different. You can see the security. So whether you have full control or modify, read and execute, read, write, all these permissions were given for, authenticated users, So what is there, So you can see. So same way on, applications, you should give the right access, whether the file is read, write or read only or archive or read. A device authorization table restrict file access to those physical devices that should logically need access. So you can have a device authorization table in your logical controls, and it will only allow access to that, But if you only allow access on the desktop computer, when they try to log in from mobile, they will not have the access. But if you believe that you have to give his personal mobile to access, then you have to give that right. For example, because of illogical or anyone to access the account receivable file from manufacturing terminal, the device authorization table will deny access um, even when a valid password is used. So accounts receivable file, not everyone can, access, from manufacturing terminal. Manufacturing department terminal, you need not to access that. Accounts receivable should be accessed by accounts DC team or a marketing team, not the manufacturing. So if they're trying to access from manufacturing team's computer, because that devices are not authorized to access, so it will simply reject, even if you have a right password, if you have captured the password. So such tests are often called compatibility tests, because they ascertain whether the code number is compatible with the potential information usage. So this user may be authorized to enter a certain kind of data, have access only to a certain information, have access but not updating authority. Sometimes you can have access but not, you can't update it, or use the system only at a certain times, So I mean, given time only they can access. Now, in a typically a bank, if they can give, okay, this is the during this time only they can access the computer system. Even weekends, even if they come to office, they can't access. It depends on your policy. Um, uh, unless they get the permission, then you have to remove that, restriction and give them a permission. The list of tables of authorized users or devices are sometimes called access control metrics. Uh, so device authorization table and the authorized users are mentioned in a access control metrics. So this is a typically a device authentication table. It gives you IP address, device information, and the groups who can access. So this type of a tables comes up in the software applications. So from these devices only you can access. So that level of you can have a controls, put it in if it requires. It is clear or not up to now? Any questions? Can I move forward now? Do you have any questions on these logical controls which I explained? Shall I
Yes,
continue? So if you have anything, just please stop me and ask. So these type of tables are there. I mean, these are very common controls, device control. Even your 4G route also, you can go and configure what devices can access, I mean, on internet, So I mean, in the home, you don't restrict, anyone can access, But if you want, like in an office also, you can restrict, okay, who can access this, You can put this IP table and device numbers and the groups, all that you can access. This comes in anything. Then you get the system access logs, records, all attempt to use the system, It shows the date, time, codes used, mode of access, and which mode you are trying to access, data involved, and the operator interventions are recorded. So that comes from the system access log. So you should be able to generate, any software should be able to generate the system access log, because all attempts of the systems, logins attempts, access attempts, you can, you can get it from this log. So when you're going to do an investigation, you can refer to this log. So encryption uses a fixed algorithm to manipulate plain text, So, there are encryption methods used to manipulate the plain text, because if you have plain text, then you need some sort of, the people can look at plain text and access. So you need a little bit of encryption. Let me see what I can show it to you. So various types of encryptions are there. I will explain probably when I explain that asymmetric encryption, I can explain to you. And encryption, I will explain that part a little bit more on from a small video. Control this, because we are going to discuss asymmetric encryption, so that we will explain that. Control disposal of document is a method of enforcing access restriction by destroying data when they are no longer used. So if the data is no longer used, you can have a controlled disposal. Even the paper documents may be shredded, and magnetic media may be erased. You have shredders, that you shred all the paper media. So this controlled disposal are very important. Um, so destroy some of the data which is not going to use no longer, so no point of keeping that. You dispose, like what you do in the paper, send it to the shredder. And automatic log off, also another control method. If it is inactive for some times on the terminal, to prevent, you might try to view that data, sensitive data, or on unattended data terminal. So it's better that after certain minutes, if the person is not attending it, it's log off. But then if he's not attending, if he's there, he can log in again. But what happened if he just kept the computer on and went to have a cup of tea or something like that? If it is still there, if it is not log off, disconnected, somebody can come and with the sensitive data. So automatically log off after a certain 5-10 minutes is very important, inactive time. Then you have a security person. An organization may need to hire a security specialist. For example, developing an information security policy for the organization. So it's commenting on security controls in the new application, and monitoring and investigating unsuccessful access attempts, appropriate duties of information security officer. The information security officer's job is to make sure that all the security controls, and he has developed the security policy for the organization. That in banks, normally they call it the CISO's Certified Information Security Officer. The central bank recommend to have a security officer. Give me 1 second. Okay. Now let's look at, now we have looked at, what are the things we have, yeah.
Sanjay, I have a question. Now, with this Data
Yeah.
Protection Act,
Mhm.
it mentioned about a data prevention officer
Okay.
in place. So, does that come under the CISO responsibilities? How, or a separate person?
It should be ideally a separate person, because you see what will happen is, you have to segregate the duties. People who is implementing the security, if he's try to audit, then there is a problem, because he has to defend himself, no? If there is a vulnerability. So normally, information security officers, we keep it independently, and he has given so much of a powers and authority, and he may not report to IT department, definitely. The CISO or information security officer should report to directly, basically, to the audit committees. So audit has a security committee. So you have board of directors. In the governing structure of the organization is board of directors, and then board of directors. So in this board of directors, you have executive directors and non-executive directors. So with my knowledge, in Sri Lanka, this does not have a big demarcation on executive or non-executive. So, some of these directors, being appointed to committees, and uh, these like governance committees, data security uh, committees are there. So these committees, uh, they will be serving, and then you have this management. There's a demarcation of management. So they discuss with the management on the security thing. But definitely these security officers, information security officers, definitely report into these committees and the responsibility to the board, or sometimes. But not for these are all compliance related stuff. It depends. If it is a bank, yes, central bank push it. So the compliance team get so much of authority to do all these things. Otherwise, if they violate that, your license get cancelled, or there will be penalty. Does that answer to your question, or your question was different?
My question was different.
Okay.
Yeah, Amit, on this particular point that you emphasized today, I think we had a chat earlier also.
Earlier also, yeah.
Yeah. So that is quite clear. Only thing is, sometimes we have seen CISO reporting to a transformation officer who is also responsible for, where say, let's say CIA. Under transformation officer, there are two
Mm-hmm.
reportees. One is the CISO, and the other one would be the CIO. So I think
CIO, no? CIO, basically. Okay.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this CISO can be double-hatted by the transformation officer, but then
Yeah.
again there is a conflict of interest because CIO reports to him. So ideally, as you correctly said, he should
Mm-hmm.
be an independent person who's reporting directly to the uh,
Dependent person, yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
risk committee or
Board committees, board
yeah,
committees,
yeah,
you can,
board
yeah.
committee. Uh, but sometimes I have seen with the explanation given, central bank has permitted,
Mm-hmm.
uh, given that they will have certain controls, I suppose. My question was, now under the Data Protection Act, they
Mm-hmm.
are mentioning a specific data protection officer. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so whether this data protection officer should be the CISO, or data protection officer has to be somebody independent, because that person also needs to be a key management personnel as per the bill, I think,
Mm-hmm.
or a independent party basically.
Yeah.
So my
I couldn't read that. I couldn't read the full. I couldn't read the Data Protection Act. It doesn't elaborate much on that. The person's,
Chaturanga, do you want
reporting
to share your view?
structure. Whatever.
Chaturanga is not there. No? Okay.
Not there, yeah. But I have not seen the recent Data Protection Act, how it been draft. But still it is debating, no, it's not passed, no, yet, is it?
It came into effect in 2021, but I think it takes effective
No, no,
2020.
it's now effective. It's passed.
Oh,
I'm confusing with the Privacy Act. The Privacy Act also now they are debating on the Parliament. No,
yeah,
uh, uh,
yeah. This was passed, I think, but only thing is certain action items uh,
uh,
come effective, I think, 2024. Yeah,
also, yeah.
2024. I think. So, do you have any material around the data prevention? Uh,
Let me figure it out. Data prevention. No, basically,
yeah,
okay, data
Data
protection.
Prevention Act.
Yeah. So let me search. In my system. But right now I don't have an exact answer to give for that one because first I have not read that Data Protection Act thoroughly. But my view is he has to be independent as given authority. If he comes under transformation officer and he does the transformation, no, and if you are reporting to him that he has to justify this transformation is correct, no, basically, there's a conflict of interest comes up. But of course, I mean, theoretically, I mean, ideally, it should be like that. But practical problems are there in the organization. Sometimes, allowing certain level of, you have your organizations, the levels, no, uh, the reporting levels. So sometimes, if it is not a top level senior person and allowing him to report to directly to the board of directors, committees, and all that, will sometimes, banks organization may think it's upset that whole hierarchy of reporting and things like that. But but we have to I have to see. I don't have enough information on this. Yeah, let me just check that out and come back to you.
Okay, thank
And
you
if I
very much.
have material, I'll share it with you. Definitely with that shared.
I think several, I mean, there were some trainings conducted by different bodies because
Okay.
it was a huge area, and I think there are some penalties also if you don't comply.
Okay. Now this is very, very critical because today we are dealing with information. No? The security of the information is very, very important. If it is a paper information, yes, somebody has to pull out the papers and put it to a file and take it out from the office. No, but here, terabytes of the data information can be taken in without knowing, from a
Yeah,
small memory stick. Uh,
yeah.
So, that's where, this is very important when it comes to information security. Yeah, let me check that out. If I can find any information on that, I'll share with
Okay, thank you.
you. So now let's look at so we have looked at the physical security, logical security, and the environmental security. I mean, that's very important. So physical security is important, how you can access biometrics or whatever it is, access, login password, and then logical control. I mean, environmental control, where they are stayed, all these hardware servers, data centers. Then logical control is how these applications control access. So all three we discussed. But having application controls good, having good environment to keep all your servers very secure, and having biometrics, physical controls are not enough because this is inside the office. No? So inside the office, you have a data center. So data center, you have environmental controls. So data center. Okay. And then you have physical control, biometrics, everything is there. And access controls also you have done what we discussed, or logical controls. Applications are logically secure. But the problem is, even if you have those security, it's not enough because your organization is open to internet. Your customers are coming from internet. So you need to have this internet security because internal boundaries securing through biometrics and all that is not enough because hackers can come from internet and hack your systems. So therefore, internet security is very important. So connection to the internet's present security issues. Wide network security policy should be at very, least include a user account management system, installation of an internal firewall. I will explain what is firewall in the next slides. um, Methods such as encryption to ensure that the intended user receive the information and the information is complete and accurate. Because when the data travel through the internet or public links, if it is going on a plain text, somebody can sneeze this data and get that data information and hack the system. So therefore, encryption is required. I will explain what is encryption. I told you I'll explain later in this lecture. So because otherwise there is a problem, security. The user account management involves installing a system to ensure that new accounts are added correctly and assigned only to the authorized users. Also, old and unused accounts are removed promptly. So if people has left the organization or people has left the department or maybe retired, so those accounts has to be removed. The passwords are changed periodically, so you have to have a password policy. Every 3 months or every 1 month, they have to change the password. It prompts. Otherwise, without entering the new password, creating it will not allow. So employees should be educated on how to choose password that cannot be easily guessed. So I mean, you can teach them, but also in the password, this thing you can have a policy, or it will not allow unless it has some diverse characters, numbers, scientific characters, and letters. Letters also one, at least one capital letter. I mean, these password things, strengthening the passwords are all documented, and you can download these. I mean, for banks, they can, go for, if you're going for PCI DSS, payment card industry DSS standard for data center. This PCI DSS manual, if you download it, it will show you how to generate the password. What level of password security is required. So these manuals, I'll probably share some of the PCI DSS manual. I was involved in, certifying my data center on these things. So that shows very nice. I mean, any of these guidelines you can take. I mean, not because you're going to get the PCI DSS, but they say very good guideline for the password generation. So now let's look at, I was mentioning here on firewall encryption and various devices. So let's try to understand what is a firewall. The firewall separates the internal network from the external network. So what is external networks is your internet. So it has to separate and prevent, passage for specific type of traffic. So it identifies the names, internet protocol addresses, IP address we call it, and the applications, and compares with them programs access routes. What you set up in the firewall, this firewall is like a wall having the fire, so then no one can jump in. So the rules are defined. If the rules are not satisfied, this PC or mobile phone cannot access these websites and the servers. I mean, probably the front website anybody can access, but through the proxy servers, you just allow them to go into the inside, and then inside you can't access any of the servers without those protection. The firewalls you get, the packet filtering systems, which examine incoming network packets and drops, if it is unauthorized packet. So it examines all the packets coming in and drops it unauthorized. So that's called a packet filtering. And a proxy server. This acts as an intermediary for requests between the client application and the real server. So the real server will be, let's say your website server is the real server. The client request come to the proxy server, and the proxy will connect to the web server. So you're not directly allowing the, web server to be accessed. So from that proxy, Therefore you don't have a real web server visibility to the internet client. It is visible on the proxy, and the proxy takes that. I'll tell you why that. The you access in the proxy server's IP address, but then the proxy server will map once you come, if it is authorized user, firewall, sent to you, and then you map that IP to real IP of your site. And for that, outside people don't see that IP address of other real servers. So that's called a proxy. When you appoint a proxy, like for example, a board of directors, actual shareholders may not be able to come for board meetings. So they appoint the proxies. Some they are good, trusted people, appoint them as a board of directors. For example, Damika Pereira. He has so many companies. He can't go and attend those board meetings. So he has few trustworthy people, and they act as a proxy, and they'll be appointed as a board. So they will report what's going on to Damika Pereira or Harry Jayawardene, maybe any of these business people. So you get these application gateways. Is an application level proxy that limits traffic to specific applications and prevent malicious requests from being submitted to the web application. So the application gateways you can have it. So whatever the traffic comes in, it acts as a proxy and they limit the traffic to specific application. And if there's a malicious request from, it will drop it. And then you get the circuit level gateways. The circuit level gateways connect the internal devices, example, network printers, with an outside TCP/IP port. It can identify a valid TCP. So let's say if an outside person um, uh, wanted to access this host computer, and then maybe you want to print something. Our internal person printing is okay, but outside person printing, so then you have to have a circuit. So that person should be authorized to print this. So this is out, this is in. So you can have a circuit level gateways so that he's allowed to print. So let's say he send a print job, which prints here. But then somebody in that office, okay, he will staple and send it to the clients or whatever. So because let's say if he doesn't want to share the file, then you might ask, okay, why not he share the file with that inside person and the inside person print it? He doesn't want to share the file, the soft file, and he prints it, and printed copy will fly. So that's called a circuit level gate. And then you have another thing called stateful inspection. So that stores information about the state of the transmission and uses it it has a background for evaluating message from a similar sources. So that's called a stateful inspection firewall. So it's inspect. Okay, this client outside computer from internet, they are coming to my server access. I will store the information, the stateful firewall, they store the information. State tables, they will save it there in the background, and they are evaluating what's going on with these messages. Or sometimes if a similar device, similar source trying to access, then it identify, no, that's not the correct device. The firewall systems ordinarily produce reports and organization-wide internet use. Uh, Unusual usage patterns they can identify, and system penetration attack. Someone trying to hack. For example, if this person, unauthorized person, trying to log in into this server, but he's not authorized, he tried to hack this one. So he tried to hack the server, but it will not allow because at the entrance you have a firewall. It checks and it doesn't allow it to go. So that's the best truth. So when the culprit entered the system, then no point of protecting it. Before entering it, you have to protect it. So firewalls do not provide adequate protection against computer virus. I mean, you might ask, what about computer? Now, computer virus won't protect by the firewall. It can, certain level like signatures may be there, but not full. So organization should include one or more antivirus measured in the network security. So you have to install antivirus into your desktops, into your servers, and all that. Uh, that can be individual antivirus software on the desktop or network version. You get it, and it will push to all computers, and then you can centrally manage the antivirus software. So normally organization, we don't install individual versions to the machines, like what we do at homes, because we never know whether they updated the antivirus software. But when it is from the server, it pushes the latest patches to each individual machine. Uh, so antivirus software, there are two ways. One, you install into individual machines. But here in this case, there is a server with antivirus software, and that push the virus updates into machine. Now, what is the advantage? Now, let's say if it is internet, so it has to get the latest signature from the internet. So it gets the signatures and stored in the AV antivirus server and push out to thousands of machines. If you have in the network, branch network, it pushes this. So, but if you don't have antivirus server, what will happen? Each and every machine will go to internet and download the latest signature updates, database updates. But that adds the huge amount of traffic unwanted. You're paying for internet bill, and it disturbs the internet traffic. So that's what how you have a antivirus server, and then it downloads the one copy and push it to multiple machines. So that's the uh, good thing about having a virus server, virus guard server version. So normally large companies, they don't install individual machines. They do it this way because it saves the internet bandwidth, and it is a much more better way to do that. So now let's look at the other controls like authentication. So authentication measures verify the identity of the user. This ensure that only the intended and the authorized users gain access to the system. Authentication. The most firewall system provide authentication procedures, and access controls are the most common authentication procedure. Access controls. Now let's look at those controls. So access controls. You have authorizing the person, right person to access the right resources. Authentication, authorization, and access. So triple A sometimes. So first you authenticate the right user and authorize it, and then authorize what servers you are going to access. I mean, that triple A servers, A. Authorization, authorize the user, authorize the authenticate first, then you authorize which servers he can access, which application he can access, and then it controls the access, what they access and all that. So then other controls are checksums. This help the data integrity by checking whether the file has been changed. So this system computes the value of the file and then check whether this value equals the last known value for this file. If the numbers are the same, the file has likely remain unchanged. So we use these cryptographic algorithms. Now let's say if it is a cryptographic algorithm, this word is the input, and it will be hash, and it will be represented as a checksum output like this, some characters. Now this file has slightly unchanged. So instead of a cryptographic algorithm, the name now comes as a cryptographic algorithms, the S. Okay. But then when you hash it with the same way, same algorithm on hash, you can see the number is different now. Checksum output is different. So therefore, you recognize, I mean, it's changed now. Um, the string has changed. The small changes so makes a big difference. So that's what it trying to do. I mean, these small changes sometimes not visible in a normal decision. In the checksum process, it is visible. It's not by just one letter. You can see that it's changed completely. So therefore, it's visible. So the data storage is another method. I mean, we have to secure on the data storage. The system computes the value for the file, and then check whether the value equals the last known value for this file. And if the numbers are the same, the file has likely remain unchanged. So that's also you can look at to figure it out whether the file has changed. So if they're the same size of the file, value unchanged. Storing all, because sometimes it can get corrupt also. Then the value has changed. So storing all related data on one storage device creates security problems. So if you're still storing in one device, but what if that fails or if it hacks? The hardware or software malfunctions occur or unauthorized access is achieved, the results could be disastrous. So don't store all the data in one device because that device can crash, the hardware failure. Then you lose the data. Or it can be hacked by breaking the logical controls. Then you're losing it. Don't keep everything in one device. So data storage methods, you can have different ways. The greater emphasis on security is required to provide backup and restrict access to the database. For example, the system may employ dual logging, that is used through use of two transaction logs written simultaneously on separate storage media. Um, so in a normal way, machine A and machine B is there. Uh, they keep a backup of machine A in machine B. So it makes a use of a snapshot technique to capture the data values before and after transaction processing. So if one fails, at least it's there in the other one. These files that stores this value can be used to reconstruct the database in the event of data loss or corruption. So in case if the machine one data loss or corruption happen, we can reconstruct from machine two, you know. So like that, you can do it. So then on the backup restoration time from the machine two, you can restore the machine one. So these the responsibility for creating, maintaining, securing, and restricting access to the database belongs to database administrator. So in organization, there is a separate person called DBA, database administrator. I mean, his job is to maintain, secure, and restrict access to the database. I mean, I use always this person. His name is Vajira in Selinco Life, and he's the database administrator. And he was highly regarded by the company because he's having all the data regarding the Selinco Life. He maintains secure and restrict. And even the management consider him as the most important person with he has a great knowledge of Oracle and all the databases. And he secure his restrict access on the database because I mean Selinco Life probably the largest private sector insurance company. And then I mean so much of data. And these are all customer information. The privacy laws are there. Privacy should be protected. And, that's very important. The trust is on the privacy. So database management system includes security features, specified users access may be limited to certain data fields or logical view depending on the individual assigned duties. So everyone is not can see everything in the data based on their assignments, assigned duties. They can see because data you don't show it everywhere because otherwise there's a threat. So any questions up to now?
Okay, sir.
Let's look at cloud computing. What is cloud computing? Cloud means you store with the cloud service provider information. Uh, you know, uh, it's a telecom companies like SLT has a cloud services called Akasa. So Dialog has another service for cloud called Cumulus Cloud. And when I asked them what is Cumulus Cloud, they said, when the aircraft come down from the highest position, maybe they fly at 30,000 feet. And that 30,000 feet, normal clouds are not there. It's all past, I mean, all these rain, everything happens. Those clouds may be less than 10,000 feet, all these moisture, clouds. So, so they fly at 30,000. When they come for landing, they pass this layer of cumulus cloud. So that's where you get a lot of friction, jerking and all that, when you pass that thicker, condensed cloud. So that's called a cumulus. So the dialogue named that as a cumulus cloud. So cloud doesn't mean that it's all the data in the sky, but data is outside the organization with the service cloud. So AWS, Google, Azure, Microsoft Azure, all are big cloud service providers. So cloud computing relieves organization of need to manage the storage of both application and data because of all software and data are stored on internet. So you don't have to buy hardware, the computing power, storage. And even you sometimes don't want to buy the application. Application also can get it on a monthly bill from a cloud service provider. So that's called a cloud computing. So cloud computing is defined as a standardized IT capability that is services, software, and infrastructure delivered via the internet um, in a uh, paper use. Paper use. So you pay only for use, or you have a self-service way. You can increase, you get bill, more memory, I increase it, then you recharge on the credit card. So advantages of cloud computing include lower infrastructure investment. So you don't have to invest on hardware, the server, storage, and all that. It's not just investment on server. In the data center also you have to maintain the power, cooling, and all that. So these are all borne by the service provider, and you're having an internet connection to access those. You don't have to have maintenance cost of air conditioning, fire suppression system, hardware, and after every 4 5 years, you have to do a refresh of hardware, maybe servers, maybe after every 7 years, you refresh and buy new servers. So this cost you don't have it, you are in the cloud, but the cloud you are paying a little higher price but cloud because of the economy of scale, they can give a very good price. Then you can negotiate and buy a couple of servers, and it has increased mobility. That means, let's say, if you have a cloud services, if you're given access, you can log in from office, you can log in from home or whatever to that one. The lower personal and utility cost. So you don't have a less electricity bills in your office because you don't have to maintain the data set. It's all in the cloud. The disadvantage of cloud computing include less control. You have less control. Then there would be or an internal IT department. So if it is an internal IT department, your data is there in that department. You have more control. But now your data is in the cloud with some unknown party, and you don't know where probably it is there also. So more difficult to ensure data security and privacy, especially when it is in the cloud. So less compatibility with existing tools and software. So sometimes your tools and software you use in development and deployment of application, they are not compatible with when you try to deploy in the cloud. But anyway, on the security and the privacy matters on the cloud, there are today clouds. You can ask for secure area on that cloud area. Like if it is a payment application, if you're hosting, you can ask PCI DSS certified area. You just have to give it to us, go to her. So they will now today provide those things. So the secure data, privacy also global players, they provide that high level of privacy. Um, uh, Less control means if it is in your IT department, you have full control. But here the less control sometimes because sometimes the certain institution doesn't allow, like for example, the banking, Central Bank of Sri Lanka doesn't allow certain customer information to be kept outside Sri Lanka. They are okay to have cloud, but what they said is it has to be within the country. So those they might put some regulations, but none of these AWS or big data, cloud service providers, Azure and all that, not set up in Sri Lanka. So if you're just hosting it, it's outside Sri Lanka only. Definitely, you're hosting it. So you have to check with. But certain applications, the central bank allow for banks to set it in the cloud. But they put their conditions also. So multiple ways of cloud computing. I mean, those who are in technical, I can explain a little bit. So there are different offerings, but for others, they don't need to understand. Now, if it is you're buying only the uh, now let's say you have the hardware, and then you have a virtualization, and then you have application. So if you are buying only the hardware, this one, memory RAM and this thing. So we call it these infrastructure as a service, IaaS. So you only request, okay, give me this much of memory, processing power. I will install rest of it, the virtualization and the application I will install. So I'll pay for less. But let's say if they are giving you up to a virtualization, and then we call it a platform as a service. But let's say they say, okay, no, don't worry, you don't have to go. Your ERP application or email, I can give as a service. So then we call it SaaS, software as a service. So all these layers is provided. So infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software, as a service, So software as a service, you have to pay more because you don't buy application, you don't buy hardware, anything, you just access that, So example, SaaS HANA, SaaS ERP software. So that you can go and get SaaS uh, HANA ERP. So you can get as a software. And um, uh, some CRM softwares, you can get it as this, cloud, offerings, software as a service. Then you just pay for software and the infrastructure, everything one bill. You only pay that. So that's the advantage of cloud computing. Uh, So your cost structure is lesser in cloud computing because, um, but then, you have a problem. Let's say if the global level there's a big issue comes up, or now that you're talking about wars here, so there can be a situation, where you can access this. I'm not going to spend time much. If you go to AWS cloud services, you can access. Uh, so let me just explain that.
Meet Rob. He runs an online shopping portal. The portal started with a modest number of users, but has recently been seeing a surge in the number of visitors. On Black Friday and other holidays, the portal saw so many visitors that the servers were unable to handle the traffic and crashed. Is there a way to improve performance without having to invest in a new server? Wondered Rob. A way to upscale or downscale capacity, depending on the number of users visiting the website at any given point? Well, there is. Amazon Web Services, one of the leaders in the cloud computing market. Before we see how AWS can solve Rob's problem, let's have a look at how AWS reached the position it is at now. AWS was first introduced in 2002 as a means to provide tools and services to developers to incorporate features of Amazon.com to their website. In 2006, its first cloud services offering was introduced. In 2016, AWS surpassed its $10 billion revenue target. And now, AWS offers more than 100 cloud services that span a wide range of domains. Thanks to this, the AWS Cloud Service Platform is now used by more than 45% of the global market. Now, let's talk about what is AWS. AWS, or Amazon Web Service, is a secure cloud computing platform that provides computing power, database, networking, content storage, and much more. The platform also works with a pay-as-you-go pricing model, which means you only pay for how much of the services offered by AWS you use. Some of the other advantages of AWS are security. AWS provides a secure and durable platform that offers end-to-end privacy and security. Experience. You can benefit from the infrastructure management practices born from Amazon's years of experience. Flexible. It allows users to select the OS, language, database, and other services. Easy to use. Users can host applications quickly and securely. Scalable. Depending on user requirements, applications can be scaled up or down. AWS provides a wide range of services across various domains. What if Rob wanted to create an application for his online portal? AWS provides compute services that can support the app development process from start to finish. From developing, deploying, running, to scaling the application, up or down based on the requirements. The popular services include EC2, AWS Lambda, Amazon Lightsail, and Elastic Beanstalk. For storing website data, Rob could use AWS storage services that would enable him to store, access, govern, and analyze data to ensure that costs are reduced, agility is improved, and innovation accelerated. Popular services within this domain include Amazon S3, EBS, S3 Glacier, and Elastic File Storage. Rob can also store the user data in a database with AWS services, which
takes little time. So, you can just go and see, how big these data centers, clouds, cloud data center. So you can see videos on that, how big, it's massive, these Amazon massive data center, the power and cooling.
Once everything's perfectly organized, I'll start working on my thesis.
Amazon Web Services is an
so I'll just show
unrivaled
quickly, a few slides only.
are rigorously maintained and good to go in a center will hold anywhere from Initially, AWS bought servers off the peg, as it were, from
Can see the
traditional
number of
suppliers.
servers in
But
the
steadily
server
over
farm.
time, the firm began developing its own single-depth servers, exquisitely optimized for airflow in AWS
And
buildings,
this is
running
not the view of
port 28 ports with 25 gigabit Ethernet connectivity. This diverges, fun fact fans, from the industry standard 10
this is
gigabit
not
Ethernet
the,
and 4
massive, data center. So they achieve that economic scale, and then so that will help them to sort of achieve this cost structure. So we'll have a few more slides and then we can have a small break, So authentication, authorization, and encryption. So application authentication is a means of taking user identity from the operating system on which the network is working and passing to our authorization server for verification. So this can be assigned into application from its inception. So application authentication you can use. So it's a method of identify from the operating systems on which the user is working is passing into a authentication server for verification. So you are going to verify whether the user is having the rights. So whether this can be designed into an application from its inception, so authentication process. Or you can use this two-level authentication referred to as a two-factor authentication. This requires a username, password, and information known only by a user, another factor. So this is a one factor, this is the other factor. So that's for two factor. The information such as make a model of the use of first car or favorite food or some other question you can ask. So then you can type that one and or you can give a hardware token, which I have shown you. RSA tokens, so those you can use it as a authentication method, or you can ask simply a question, and then you answer that question. So even person who remember the password, yes, he can't do that because the second factor. But more identical good thing is to give them a physical token, hardware token, or maybe mobile phone. You can bring an app, so that's soft token. So there are these. There are three classes of authentication information. You need to remember this information: name, birthday, account number, password, or PIN. Or you can process with a badge or plastic card, like a credit debit cards, or a key, or the fingerprint. The personal characteristics can be measured from fingerprint, voice print, hand size, which you can see, the palm, or signature, or retinal pattern, the eye, which we have studied earlier. So that way also you can authenticate information. So there is I told you that I'll explain the encryption. Now you need to know what is encryption. So here we are talking about authentication. After authenticating, this is the user, then you have to authorize him to access the server, and then encrypt. And plain, click the text, So encryption technology converts data into a port. A program ports data prior to the transmission. Because when during the transmission, somebody can take that data and use it to log in into unauthorized. So another program decodes after the transmission. So First you decode it and other side decode it, and then it unauthorized users still may be able to access the data, but without the encryption key. So if you don't have that encryption key, they can't access the data, so they cannot decode the information. So this encryption software is a fixed algorithm, a step-by-step, usually mathematical procedure to manipulate plain text into understandable from encrypted text. That's called an encryption key to introduce variation. So let's look at how you do it. One method is manipulation is the ciphertext. Receiver translate the information back to the plain text. So you send this plain text, and plain text will be encrypted using a public key. And from the private key, only the receiver can decrypt it and get the plain text. So in between what goes is a encrypted traffic. So encrypted traffic, anyone can capture that traffic, but they can't understand because they don't have that private key. So only the guy who has the private key can decode it. Okay, so this is their this cryptography use these symbols to how you encrypt it. Now your plain text, let's say, comes like this one. I mean the binary pattern 001. Then you put the secret key. So your secret key is this, and then crypto text. Clipper text is encrypted one. So the encrypted one comes as like this, when you insert the key, because 1 and 1 is 0. 0 and 1 is 1. So this is the exologic only we are using in this cryptotexting. I'm not going to, don't worry about exologic means you get O logic, N logic, exologic. So exologic 0, 0, 0 XO 0 means 0. 1 XO 1 is 0. 1 XO 0 is 1. 0 XO 1 is again 1. So that logic only we are using. I mean, don't worry about it because all this data goes in the line is a 1s and 0 because binary pattern. Volt, 5 volts or 0 volts, like that it goes. So this is the clipper text. On the receiver side, he will decrypt this, he received this clipper text. So in between when this clipper text goes, no, sorry, I pronounce it well, ciphertext. Ciphertext goes, the ciphertext, anyone can capture that ciphertext, but he can't get that original plain text message. So only the receiver can get by decrypting the ciphertext by the security key. So he has the security key, the private key, and he decrypt and get the plain text which is there. So that's a very simple explanation. But you don't have to remember these things. I'm just explaining a little bit more on how to do encryption and decryption in this ciphertext mode. So. So if you want a little more on encryption overview, I mean, this is not question in the exam, I mean, this is a little bit more. Although, I mean, this slides I just added it. It's only here, the examinations question. But to understand a little bit better, I added these things, to the syllabus. So encryption overview, although data may be accessed by tapping into the transmission line, the encryption key is necessary to understand the data being sent, So this is called each public key comes paired with the unique private key together. These keys help to ensure that security of exchange of data. The message encrypted with the public key cannot be decrypted without using the corresponding private key. So the machine instruction necessary to code and decode the data can constitute 20% to 30% increase in system overhead, because when you are encrypting, the CPU cycles, the CPU requirement is going, and every packet has to be encrypted. So your system capacity, the processing capacity has to increase by 20 to 30% if you are using encryption, because encryption and decryption use processing power. No? So encryption technology may be either hardware or software-based encryption. Sometimes, your HSM device, high security module. If you are in a bank, you are familiar with HSM, payment HSMs. In your data center. So this payments HSM is a hardware security encrypted device. So all your credit card information, debit card information is kept in that HSM. So it's not in the plain text. They don't keep. They don't keep that card number and the CVV values in the plain text. It's all encrypted because in the application when they're using it's encrypted version. So nobody can see the exact card number. So you get software-based encryption also. Two major type of encryptions softwares are public key and private. So this is how it works. So you write, Bob writes, send me $. Bob uses Alice public key encryption. So he's sending to this Alice public key, and then encrypted message goes like this. He wants to send me $, send me $. And that get transmitted through this, encrypted email to Alice goes as this one. And with the Alice public key, how he has encrypted, and Bob's public key. So the public keys are there. Then the Alice received this message, and Alice used a private key to decrypt the message because this message private key she knows. So then he decrypt and get this message. So that's all the public key, private key encryption. So public key asymmetric encryption means public key asymmetric encryption requires a pair of keys, only public and one private. These pairs of keys are issued by trusted third party called a certificate authority. So, that's what when you're signing documents, you use this third-party certification authority like VeriSign, Power, GoDaddy, and all that certification authority. And Sri Lanka also we have a national root certificate authority, but sub authorities are now setting up, like Lanka is getting a certification authority, and I think SLT also might get in few. Lanka will get it in few months' time. And then you get all these certificates. You don't have to go to VeriSign and pay a lot of money in dollars. You can get a Lanka Clear certificate authority, So, so you can do signing and secure transmission through that certification. So every recipient public key is available in the certificate authorities directory, but the associated private key is only is known only to the recipient. The public keys are there on the authority directory. Any party who wishes to send a secure message encrypt it using an intended recipient's public key. The recipient then decrypts the message using the private key. The two keys are mathematically related so that the message encrypted with one key can be decrypted only with the other key. So this is the method. I will show you a small video on asymmetric encryption. For your knowledge.
Encryption is the process of taking a message and scrambling its contents so that only certain people can look at your message. There are two types of encryption, symmetric and asymmetric encryption. Let's first take a look at symmetric encryption to understand why asymmetric encryption was created. To do that, let me introduce you to Alice and Bob. Alice has a sensitive document that she wants to share with Bob. She uses an encryption program to protect her document with a password or passphrase that she chooses. She then sends the encrypted document to Bob. However, Bob cannot open this message because he doesn't know the passphrase that Alice used to encrypt the document. In other words, he doesn't have the key to open the lock. Now comes a real problem. How does Alice share this passphrase securely with Bob? Sending it through email is risky because others might find the passphrase and use it to decrypt any messages between Alice and Bob. This is exactly the kind of problem that asymmetric encryption intends to solve. It is comparable to a mailbox on the street. The mailbox is exposed to anyone who knows its location. We can say that the location of the mailbox is completely public. Anyone who knows the address can go to the mailbox and drop in a letter. However, only the owner of the mailbox has a key to open it up and read the messages. So let's now go back to technical details. When using asymmetric encryption, both Alice and Bob have to generate a key pair on their computers. A popular and secure way for doing this is by using the RSA algorithm. This algorithm will generate a public and private key that are mathematically linked to each other. Public keys can be used to encrypt data, and only the matching private key can be used to decrypt it. Even though the keys are linked together, they cannot be derived from each other. In other words, if you know someone's public key, you cannot derive his private key. If we retake our mailbox example, then the mailbox's address would be the public key, something that everyone is allowed to know. The owner of the mailbox is the only one who has the private key, and that is needed to open up the mailbox. Let's now take a look at how Alice and Bob can use asymmetric encryption to communicate securely with each other. They start by exchanging their public keys. Bob gives his public key to Alice, and Alice gives her public key to Bob. Now Alice can send her sensitive document again. She takes the document and encrypts it with Bob's public key. She then sends the file to Bob, who uses his private key to unlock the document and read it. Because they use asymmetric encryption, only Bob is able to decrypt the message. Not even Alice can decrypt it because she doesn't have Bob's private key. The strength and security of the asymmetric encryption now relies on Alice and Bob to keep their private keys well protected. If an attacker steals Alice's private key, it can be used to decrypt all messages that are intended for Alice. However, the attacker cannot decrypt messages that were sent by Alice because that requires Bob's private key. Asymmetric encryption is used in a lot of places where security really matters. You might not be aware of it, but every time you visit a secure website via HTTPS, you're actually using asymmetric encryption. It's also being used to securely send emails with the PGP protocol. And one last example, Bitcoin also uses asymmetric encryption to make sure that only the owner of a money wallet can withdraw or transfer money from it. So now you know how asymmetric encryption works and what the differences are between asymmetric and symmetric encryption. If you like this video, consider supporting me by sharing it and subscribing to my YouTube channel.
Okay. So in Sri Lanka, we have this, Sri Lanka CERT does this national root certificate. So once that is already in place, and I told you it's hosted in my data center. The one is the primary one is hosted in SLT data center, and the DR is hosted in my data center, Epic data center. But this root certificate run by Sri Lanka CERT. And once that is, now that's already set it up, but subroot has to appoint, now Lanka Pay is getting certified for subroot. So after that, you don't have to have this VeriSign or any certification. You can use national root certificate to verify them, authorize. So as I told you, I showed you the video, this arrangement is more secure than a single key system in which the parties must agree on and transmit the single key that could be. So the various algorithms are there. RSA algorithm, you have seen it, name for developers. RSA name for Rivest, Shamir, and Edelman. No, so these are the names of the developers. So you might ask, okay, what is RSA? When I show these RSA dongles, don't mix up with, the RSA that is a brand. This is, RSA algorithm. It's developed by these three people. It's the most commonly used public key method. So RSA, crypto system is a public key crypto system, one of the oldest and widely used and secure data transmission. So that's the way that is you're getting that name. Okay. So the digital signature. So digital signature is a mean of authentication and electronic document. For example, of the validity of a purchase. Sender uses its private key to encode all the part of the message, and the recipient uses the sender's public key to decode it. Hence, that the decodes the message. Hence, that key decodes the message. The sender must have written it. The one variation is to send the message in both plain text and ciphertext. If the decoded version matches the plain text version, so no alteration has occurred, so your digital signature is right. So the digital certificate is another thing. Now your mobile phones and all that, you'll have a recorded digital certificate to access. There is another means of authentication used in e-business, electronic commerce. The certificate authority issued a coded electronic certificate that contains the holder's name, the copy of public key, the serial number, and the expiration date. The certificate verifies the holder's identity. So if you install the digital certificate, then you can do the signing. The recipient of the coded message sent by the holder uses the certificate authority's public key, which is available in the internet. Public key, anybody knows it, to decode the certificate, including the message. The recipient then determines the certificate was issued by the certificate authority. So moreover, the recipient can use the sender's public key and the identification data to send to coded response. So such method may be used for a transaction between seller and buyer using credit card. So we can use this public key, private key on the seller and the buyer. The certificate also may be used to provide assurance to the customers that the website is genuine. So this root certificate, digital certificate, will give you, okay, this site is genuine, because there are, non-genuine site. You're going to do a e-commerce transaction with this site. They may not have security. They might take that credit card information or whatever it is, and they can do it. So you have to go to secure site. So digital certificate will secure. Now, once the root certificate is implement that, they will start issue these digital certificates to people who is doing the electronic form. But still, you can do it by getting these digital certificates from people like VeriSign and things like that. But then you have to pay money, good money. The public key, I think every year for VeriSign, you have to pay, I think, $50-$60. The public key infrastructure permits secure monitoring and information exchange over the internet. So this will facilitate the e-business. The two main cryptographic protocol for secure communication over the internet are SSL, Secure Socket Layer, and TSL, Transport Layer Security. You go to a website, if it is website start with HTTP, that's a hypertext transfer protocol. All the websites are written in this way. The higher level protocol that makes a graphic incentive World Wide Web possible, is called HTTPS. So if any website starting from HTTPS means it's secure website. So e-commerce sites, you can't have it HTTP. It has to be HTTPS. That means security certification is there, secure for your transaction. Sometimes when you're doing this secure transaction, if you have a virus guard in secure transaction, you may not do it on normal Google page. The URL of a secure page where shoppers enter their credit card numbers and most often change. But this normal site, for example, if you go to keys.com, the keys.com may have a lot of graphics, because item list pictures, they have to do it. So that will be HTTP. But moment when you try to do a payment, that will direct into HTTPS, that's the secure side, to do the transaction, because that has the private public key transaction. So digital time stamping service verify the time, possibly in the place of transmission. For example, document we send to the service, which apply the digital stamp and then forward the document. So digital time stamping service is also available. So the private key, we discussed symmetric encryption. The private key or symmetric encryption is a less secure than the public key method. So only a private key sending, because then somebody can capture that one. It requires only a single secret key for each pair of parties that want to send each other coded message. So data encryption standard shared, a private key method developed by US government is the most prevalent secret key method. Is based on the numbers with 56 binary digits. The advanced encryption standard, this one is a cryptographic algorithm used by the US government organization to protect sensitive information. So the National Institute of Standards and Technology, developed the IIA in, so that is Advanced Encryption Standard in 1997, when it announced the need for successor algorithm for DES. So that's the data encryption standard, which was becoming vulnerable, brute force attack. So what I've written in this blue color is the cryptography is a brute force attack. Means what is brute force attack? Consists of attackers submitting many passwords or passphrases with the hope of eventually guessing the correct. So that's called a brute force attack. So they send so many passwords and guessing that the attacker systematically checks all possible passwords, passphrases until it correct one found. Now, let's say if it is that's what if you are written, if your password is a 3 digits one, Sam. So you can use all these combination because 26 letters are there and 26 letters and your combinations are 26 and 26. So if you know that these are only letters, no numbers, so your number of combinations, you can try 26 into 26 into 26 and you can judge. And I mean, you can do it faster by algorithm. I mean, that is the reason sometimes these certain sites, when you log in and type the password, it picks up a pictures and asks, recognize the picture or mark the picture or mark what is there mentioned inside the picture, the number. So that is to avoid people robotize these password hacking methods by submitting streams of passwords, and checking whether they can enter, for these 3-letter passwords, if that is the passwords that they're using in the system. So it's a 26 into 26 into 26 number of combination. When you try, you can get it. Okay. So that's why in certain things, when you try to go, you get a headache. Sometimes it shows a pictures and asks to say the bus stop. And every time when you say that, it puts up another pictures and very irritative. But that is to prevent by robotizing. But, because today you have so many ways to do the fast typing quickly and algorithms, you can run a script and then it tried to log in with these all combinations, and he entered it, succeeded. To prevent that, only we have that. So that's the first part of it, so we can have a 15 minutes break and start the next part.